Watching a good magician perform an illusion can be mind-boggling. You see things that your brain has no explanation for, and yet, there they are. That's when you have to remind yourself that it's all deception and illusion. Welcome to Mornings with Bishop Robert, where today we're going to explore the connection between seeing and believing. Thanks for popping in today to sip a beverage with a bishop. You know, my goal is to introduce people to the Jesus they never knew and help them get to know him and his word personally and better. So if our time together today speaks to your heart, let me invite you to like, subscribe, and also share with a friend. Well, we've all likely seen an amazing card trick or sleight of hand. My own working repertoire contains a pretty convincing disappearing coin illusion, a card trick that requires no setup to perform, and the ability to pull the top of my index finger off. World-class magicians like David Copperfield or Penn and Teller fool pretty much everyone. Only the card trick works with adults. The finger and the coin trick only seem to amaze a younger clientele. But if you've got an interest in how magic is done and access to YouTube, you can see how plenty of amazing illusions are actually performed. You know, things like this, where you pull the coin and then make it disappear. Spoiler alert, it's always what you don't see that gets you. Well, quite obviously, you simply cannot believe everything you see. Today's verse says, "Blessed are those who have not seen and have believed." When Jesus spoke those words to his disciple Thomas, he was responding to Thomas's expression of faith after he had seen the resurrected Jesus face to face. A week earlier, on the day that Jesus had risen from the dead, the majority of disciples were together in a room with the doors locked for fear of the Jews. But Jesus came and stood among them and confirmed to them that he had in fact conquered the grave. But Thomas had not been with them that night. So when the other disciples told him they had seen the Lord alive and risen, he was unconvinced. He told them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails have been and put my hand into his side, I will never believe." Well, 8 days later, his disciples were once again inside the same room. The doors were still locked. This time Thomas was with them. Jesus came and stood among them again. And after greeting them, Jesus turned to Thomas and said, "Put your finger here. Touch my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas knew that only one person was capable of knowing his thoughts and the words he had spoken a week ago. Only one person could raise himself from the dead. Only one person could walk through the walls of a locked room and still have the physical capacity to be touched and handled. Only God himself was capable of that. So Thomas replied, "My Lord and my God." And Jesus said to him, "Because you've seen me, you believed. But blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." You see, it's all about placing our faith in Jesus, believing in the one that we have not yet seen, deciding to believe the promises he makes when he offers to exchange your sin for his righteousness and your guilt for his grace. It's not a magic trick that makes the eternal penalty for sin disappear. It's 2 acts of absolute love and trust. The first act of love took place in Jerusalem about 2,000 years ago, when Jesus died on the cross to pay the price for our sin, and then rose again to prove his victory over death. The second act of love occurs when we accept his offer of forgiveness and choose to follow him. And the interesting twist is that when we choose to believe in him, even though we've not seen him, that's when we begin to see him move in our lives. He changes our heart. He sets us free from things that controlled us. He places his Spirit within us. We begin to see Jesus working in us as we yield to him in his word. We see Jesus working in others as we pray. We see him clearly enough to follow him. And we see him moving in the lives of those around us. It's when we choose to believe, even though we've not yet seen him, that we get the blessing of truly seeing him. Yeah, with faith, believing is seeing. So what's the lesson we learned from our opening illustration of magicians? Well, it's simply this. Believing everything you see is a mistake. But a far greater one is having to see everything you believe. Because with faith, believing is seeing. And blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Hey, as we wrap up, I want to ask you to help me introduce people to the Jesus they never knew and help them get to know him and his word personally and better. Would you please like this video? It will help lots more people see it. And then click follow or subscribe. That's so important because that lets you and I get together every day. I'd love to meet you in the comments section and hear about how this lesson today helped you see things a little differently. And one more thing. Share this with a friend, would you? Because as you do, you're part of the team touching more than 1 million hearts all over the world with the love of Jesus. Thanks for helping.